Well, how's everybody doing? My name is Jahmane, for those that don't know me. This is some of my work. I maybe want to start, piggybacking off of what Dennis was saying about our connection and how we sort of evolved and met in the Marshall Street building. And I was she said 20 some odd years ago? I don't know. I mean, back then I was probably maybe 16 or 17. And I took over a studio of a fellow artist that gifted it sort of to me and my brother and a couple of our friends. And at that time we were working on our clothing line, and I was a young budding graffiti artist, and street artist, as they call us now. But just remembering that environment, and how that helped sort of nurture me as an artist and just gave me the platform to continue up until now. And I've been able to flourish and sort of, take art and clothing and develop it into, what I'm doing today. So this piece sort of represents some of my newer work. If anybody that's familiar with my stuff, I sort of have different collections, and I like to work on collections of work, and it sort of gives me, a level of sanity, so I don't feel like I need to just do, just work this style. And if I do, more portraits and more abstract stuff, then I'm sort of not being honest to myself. I feel like as an artist, you should be free to create however or whatever you want to create. Especially if you check out my website, you'll see that I have like one collection called New Vintage, which is like a play on vintage posters and advertisements with like a new twist, like a new social commentary twist to it. I have like the Electra diagram, which is like a real graphic, line art, figurative, women with their bodies painted, type of thing. I have some of my older stuff called the Nebula collection, which this is sort of reminiscent of it, because that whole collection is like based around like, the concept of like Afrofuturism and sort of spacey science fiction type of themes. So mixed in with this is a collection I started doing maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, called Space Particles, and I'm really into, modern architecture, minimalism, things of that nature. And, but I always sort of felt the need to do more with my art. People like to see, faces and things that they can identify with. Sometimes, abstract art can be a little bit too cerebral, and people are like, yeah, but I don't want to buy it per se. Not that you're creating just to sell it, but just to communicate with people, So in doing that, I decided to fuse, some of my collage work, like even the woman in this represents some of the collage pieces that I was, doing with paper, and then I would create a collage and then go back and repaint it, in a larger form. So I started bringing the whole space particle abstract fusion into it, and this is sort of the, the culmination of that. I also have, a couple pieces in the back room, and even this particular piece right here that represents, that fusion. As an artist, and going back to me being a graffiti artist or just being inspired to get into art, graffiti, just sort of turned me onto art. Prior to that, it was just like, art is whatever. I'm not necessarily an artist, but growing up in the 80s, just seeing graffiti for the first time, going to the Bronx, that made me want to become an artist. Like, I had no idea whatever, but just seeing tags and just seeing it in public, and that's what fueled me, to be a public artist. But seeing tags and seeing graffiti in public was like, I want to do that, So I started doing tags, started getting into, doing graffiti, and it just sort of evolved, up until this point. I feel like I'm sort of putting an umbrella on everything. So going back to this piece, the other space particles in the back, I feel like this is sort of a direction that I'm heading, and sort of we'll see what comes out of it.
I was curious about the abstract. Like here, there are a lot of geometric planes. Was that there from the beginning, or did that come?
Well, yeah, it was sort of an experimental process, because even how I create the space particles, I'll use collage, like paper. So I'll paint paper or use, pieces from a magazine, and I'll actually create like a collage. I try to do it so it's not so, intentional, because it's almost like creating abstraction is like a contradiction. You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to be natural, but then you're creating it. So it's like, how do you do that and capture what you're looking for? So I'll almost, just take pieces of paper and just let them fall where they may, and then I'll photograph them, and then I'll work sort of backwards from that, you know, just so it's a natural process. Because sometimes, like I said, you're sitting there trying to make things happen, it seems unnatural, you know. So that's sort of like the technique I use to create the actual, you know, the abstract pieces in the work. And then, you know, of course, this is, you know, also a fusion of, you know, spray paint, you know, acrylic, you know, we have some typography. It's, you know, I'm getting to a point where I'm just, you know, using everything that I've learned and sort of fusing it all together. And also, you know, focusing on creating stories. As a graffiti artist and as a public artist, I feel like, you know, just, you know, when you're putting your artwork out for people to see, it's like you have an immediate audience, whether they want to, you know, like it or not, or see it or not. So you're automatically just demanding people's attention. And now that you may have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people's attention, depending on where your piece is in public, like, what are you going to do with it? You know? So in most of my pieces, you know, I'm incorporating different concepts and storylines that, you know, a lot of times I work out on paper and you know, almost have like a theme to each collection, and then it all goes into a piece.
Have you done some portraiture like that of yourself?
That's a good question. No. I mean, I would. I mean, to me, I'm not to, you know, get too, you know, romanticize everything, but to me as an artist, it's more about me putting out. You know, it's not really about me and, you know, sort of capturing me. It's more like the energy and my creativity I'm giving to the world, you know. But maybe I will. Yeah.
Is there any digital media in here, and do you use digital media in anything?
Yeah. You mean like in pre-production?
Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, yeah. I mean, you know, a sidebar, you know, just being able to be an artist and a living artist, I do a lot of graphic design, stuff like that. So I work with Photoshop, Illustrator, and, you know, I do, you know, stuff, you know, just as a day job type of thing. So I always, you know, work with digital mediums, you know, a lot of Photoshop. So even like when I'll create my collages and photograph them, I'll run them through Photoshop and, you know, pull them apart and you know, play with some of the composition through that. And then when I get it sort of where I want it to go, then print it out and sort of paint from that. I mean, I think, I don't know how many artists have, you know, accepted, you know, the digital realm yet, but it just saves a lot of time. It's like certain things I can do, but like, why bother when you could just sort of speed up and get to a point where you want to paint. 3 questions.
Your collections seem like albums to me, like classic albums, each one being a distinct thing. Are you inspired by music as you make these collections?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a child of, you know, everything from funk, soul to, you know, and then, you know, creating art, that's a key component, is just listening to music. And, you know, I come from the era where you bought an album, or the album cover really sold you a lot of times. You wouldn't know, even now, like, you know, you go to like a thrift store or something, you're just hunting, pulling out an album, that sold the album. The music could be garbage, but you just, you know what I mean? But you just, you know, got wrapped up in the album cover. So yeah, and I mean, that plays into my themes and everything. And it just helps me stay sane a little bit, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm not really the type of artist that will work on stuff for like, you know, 2 years. That's just not me. Between, you know, I explode and whatnot. So I try to, you know, sort of compartmentalize like a time frame of how I'm working on it, just so everything sort of develops over a period of time. And then I can get to a point where I feel like I'm done. Because I really don't like to have multiple pieces undone and sitting around and staring at me and I'm like, you know, finish me, and I'm like, no, you know what I'm saying? So I try to, you know, I mean, I got to that point. I mean, I've been through a lot of torment as an artist to get to understanding that. But, so, I mean, definitely, you know, the themes and the collections help me stay sane. I think you had a question.
So, I'm interested too in the shirts and the bags and that aspect of public art. Do you feel like there's a relationship happening between you and the people wearing your work? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, that whole connection really started when I was young. Like I said, once again, being a graffiti artist, and I mean, I'm sure most people remember the 80s here, and just hip hop and fashion at the time, just being able to make money off of somebody coming to me as I'm like, you know, 15 or 16, hey, can you do a jean jacket for me? You know, the lead jean jacket, put stuff in the back, and you make $50, it's like, you know, when you're 16, you know, it's like, okay, I keep doing this, you know, so But also that it also helped my art. It was almost like people became like subway trains. Like they would wearing your art, people would see other people placing like, hey, who's that? I want to get a jacket or get some pants done. And it just sort of, evolved. I mean, that's really how I got into doing clothing. It wasn't like I want to be a clothing designer. I can't sew, I can't, I just conceptualize stuff and make it happen. But yeah, definitely.
I have small questions. I just noticed your signature with the rich seal. It's the Chinese painting.
Yeah.
Does it mean something to you because you have both?
Yeah, well, I mean, inside the actual seal, I mean, I'm obviously, as a graffiti writer, once again, the whole term of writer is writing your name and getting your tag. And within that, I mean, from the outside looking in, you just see a tag somewhere, like, oh, graffiti, it's not. But, it's actually a deep, rich culture and history in being a writer. So as a writer, you're constantly developing your hand styles. And I always, went to studying like calligraphy, Chinese, Arabic, and the different styles of calligraphy that helped me, develop my tag. Because, once again, as a graffiti writer, graffiti is almost like a contact sport. It's really competitive, So if you want to be almost better than the next guy, you need to have styles and, so when they see your tag, they're like, okay, he's nice, you know what I mean? It's like, so, and I mean, I nothing but respect, calligraphy and different writing styles. So, and then, and then this little stamp, once again, being influenced by Asian art and just the simplicity and the discipline of a lot of Asian, art, I developed that whole seal just as like my signature to tie into what I was doing.
You carving the seal yourself?
No. Well, the first one, like, once again, I was young and had a lot of energy. The first one I did, I made that, but that's actually a stamp. I did the design and it had a stamp made and just stamped it. Yeah. Anybody over here? I feel like I'm talking to them.
Well, the question I had is, when you were doing graffiti, your unwanted audience was naturally the cops.
Sort of, by default. I mean, it was by default because I guess they felt like they had to do their job. I mean, so much has changed now.
No, but it affects what you're doing. You have to do it real quick. You
What?
get out of there real quick, because I'm from South Bronx too.
Yeah, so I mean, but it depends on the area. I mean, if you were at a layup or you were at a certain wall or you had lookouts, I mean, so there were a lot of different ways to go about it.
I assume you appreciate that you don't have to look over your shoulder while you're looking at the canvases.
I do, but it's, I mean, not to incriminate myself, I'm not totally out of the element. But it keeps your blood running, I mean, I still like that, but what I was gonna say is like, graffiti and street art has become a lot more acceptable now, and it has become, part of the, American fabric a lot more, so, things have changed, I think.
I'll buy it.
Yeah. The piece? Or So, where's Dennis? Check that out. You gotta check it out.
Okay, last question. Yeah.
Last one.
Can you talk a minute about the name of your clothing line?
Okay.
And I bring it up because
The short or the long?
I was in the room at the opening, and a man said, "I'm worried. I gotta know what that means. I'm not gonna buy it. I want to buy it. I like it, but I don't know what culture means."
I mean, the short it's just the word culture. Just spelled it.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's not that deep. But it's
Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right, thank you.